IVM.
Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Amit Doshi and Kavita Rajwade with us on Audio Gyan. Amit graduated in 1996 from Pearson School of Communication at the University of Delaware and moved back to Mumbai after that. After moving back, he worked for movies. After moving back, he worked on movies, ads, and in television, starting w.r.t Information Technologies in 1999 to create e-commerce websites. Kavita Rajwade is a new media ninja. With stints in print, radio, television, events, sports, and with music labels, she has always been ahead of the curve. Podcasting is the latest industry she is looking to revolutionize. Today, they are the founders of India's largest podcasting network, IVM, Indus Vox Media, and we are here to discuss more about podcasting and some bits. First of all, thank you for giving us your time, and it's a real pleasure to have you on Audio Gyan.
It's going to be fun to do this.
Hi, Kedar.
I've been hearing your show for a long time. You started a while ago.
Yeah. And I've been listening on and off to certain episodes on different episodes or different podcasts on your network. And I'm sure most of the stuff is documented as to how the things have been progressing in the podcasting industry. Mm-hmm. But I have a slightly different take on what I want to document today, which is a brief history, a brief background about the podcasting as a concept. Okay. And some nuances with which I can connect to art side more towards the art aspect of
the business, I guess.
Yeah.
So I would say that, first off, we're going to kind of disagree right off the bat on that, right? Because I think that it is more craft than art. I think that podcasting is a thing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say that there isn't a creative element to it, but I think it is more craft. It is about learning what you want to do. It is about figuring out how you want to do it. And it is about then going ahead and doing it, right? Mm-hmm. You're not looking for... you don't have the luxury, and again, maybe I'm wrong about this, right? But I feel like art means you're in some ways waiting to be inspired. And you don't have the luxury of waiting for inspiration in something like this, right? Mm-hmm. In this, you have to kind of move on things. You just have to move, and that can only be done through expertise and craft.
But is it because you have...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it because you have set expectations in the market, or is it sort of a converting into a business, or it's generally the way it is?
It is about being a business. I think that is a big reason why it would be like that. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's that.
Yeah, I mean, from a business perspective, right? I mean, how are you going to get all your... nuts and bolts together, because art is kind of got this slightly romanticized overview about things, and like he said, it's not like there's no creative element, and of course every single show that we produce today has a thought, has a certain scale that it kind of can reach. It's got a certain message, it's got different things, and so the crafty element is how you put this beautiful combination of a great show together. Mm-hmm. And of course, and then you're running the deeper, larger business around multiple such products. So I agree with the fact that it's more craft and then it's art.
Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to bring in that business element maybe in the last question. Okay. But I've come up with few questions.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, did I answer your question, or did I just take a tangent?
No, you just took it away. But
ask the question again, and I'll try and back up.
So I would like to start with if you guys can tell me some brief history about podcasting, because from my understanding, it started in 2005, but I don't know.
Earlier than that, I think 2003, 2004. I mean, the word podcasting came out in 2005, but the idea of putting out audio content to be distributed by an RSS feed, which is the fundamental building blocks of a podcast, right? So this was done by Dave Weiner and Christopher... Jeez, do you remember his name? The guy we met on that panel.
Yeah, I know. What is this?
Man, okay, so we'll cut this piece a bit, okay? So podcasting started in 2003 when Dave Weiner created so as a technology guy, I'm sure you are familiar with XML and RSS, right?
Yeah.
So RSS feeds were out before 2003, but then what Dave Weiner did is that to the standard, he added the idea of creating a link attribute.
Okay.
And once you created, a media attribute, a media link attribute. And once you did that, at that point in time, you could use an RSS feed to now disperse or distribute audio content or video content for that matter. But in 2003, 2004, it was audio content, right? You could now distribute that content using an RSS feed. And that is where podcasts, if you will, started, really. They were originally consumed through RSS feeds. RSS feed readers. I mean, like I am sure not many, but some remember Google Reader, Opera Reader, a lot of other readers. That there used to be RSS readers, right? And from the RSS reader, it then became a thing where Apple started importing it into they created a store for audio content, and it started to be called a podcast because the Apple iPod had released. And the iPod was a great place to listen to this kind of content. And so then it kind of just took on it took on a life of its own. And that's kind of where podcasting started from.
Interesting. So 2002 and 3, okay. Yeah. And in India? How did it come into the picture? Like,
so India, the first ones were a while ago. There was a thing called IndieCast, which was done out of Bangalore. Aditya Matre did that.
A friend of mine used to do India Ka Tadka or something, Tech Tadka or something.
I remember that as well. Yes, I do remember that. Yeah. So there have been a few podcasts that have happened here and there in India, right? But I think there has always been there's always been a demand constraint because there was a lack of supply of this kind of audio content, right? And I think that is something that was never really addressed, and I don't even know that it's still being addressed because right now I think we are the only company which is kind of trying to make a good amount of this sort of content, and so there is a demand issue.
Yeah, which we are kind of, fixing the supply for. I mean, that's what, we've worked on over the last 4 years, ever since IVM came about, is that we've had to basically cater to the demand that we were going to see. So be able to just sit and actually put out, I mean, we're now, as of now, today, I think we're like a 72 show network. So we've really put our heads down and just ensured that, we, as much as like people are going to discover this new space, you're also very likely to quickly want to try other stuff so that, so you should have that kind of stuff. And so now we've got like shows in almost every category, content category that exists, whether it's just, of course, there are like some sitting categories that, will do really well, like humor, comedy. You know that this stuff really well. But actually, having worked on so many of the shows that we've done, our second most popular category is a public policy category. The Seen and the Unseen with Amit Verma, and Ganatantra, Pulyabazi, w.r.t, which is a Kannada podcast. All of these shows, Hamsini, Hariharan's show, States of Anarchy. So all of these shows now sit in a certain, not political, what did we call that the other day? Policy conversations, but deeper, more country related, more, that kind of stuff. But it's interesting to see how people are consuming this stuff, right?
But I'm curious to know as to, like when Ola started, they started off with probably 50 taxis or 10 taxis, right? Similarly, you guys must have started with one podcast. And what brought that conviction that we should just deep dive into this?
So, I mean, like some of it is personality.
Or what was, sorry to interrupt, but what were the triggers as to, yes, this is the space?
Sure. So one is, I am not bent with the idea of doing one of anything. I want to do stuff at a larger scale. That's kind of how I am built. Given that, why this particular business, why this particular model, why all of these things, right? So the essential fundamental thought was this: talk radio as a media type. Okay, talk radio as a way of consuming content is something that is popular almost everywhere else in the world, but we don't have that in India. We don't have that in India primarily because of regulatory issues. The way the government of India issues radio licenses. The radio license has a caveat: no news and current affairs. So given that, it's very difficult to create talk radio. So since we cannot do talk radio, how do we get this kind of content out to people? That was the fundamental question, right? And so the idea of using the internet as a delivery mechanism to create, disseminate, and push out this kind of content, right? That seemed to me like there was a big business to be made over here.
And also India, right? I mean, we've been like a radio country. I mean, my parents have always had a radio set around them, and so we are. It's not new to us from a consumption perspective. Audio has been around. We listen to so much music, radio, FM now, but even AIR and stuff like that. So I mean, again, just like how everybody moved, watching television shows to moving to a YouTube or other OTT platforms from a video on demand, like watch it when you want, right? Radio stations are not designed like that, in the sense if you missed a 9 a.m. breakfast show, of course now you can pretty much find it online and listen to it, but earlier you've missed it. So of course, and also like the fact that look at our country, we're designed, we're travel oriented, we spend all these hours commuting from home to work and stuff like that. Huge space. I mean, almost everybody you see, right, is wearing a headphone, whether they're listening to music or whatever that is. So, of course, that's the space that we're looking to capture.
I had taken a slightly different take in one of the conversations which I had with someone else, that like historically also India has been more, the education format was Guru Shishya Parampara, and there also a vocal tradition was more dominant.
We have an oral tradition of storytelling. We have an oral tradition of imparting of knowledge. We do have deep oral traditions in just general culture, right? But how are those oral traditions how do you make those oral traditions scalable, right? How do they translate into mass numbers? That is something which, unfortunately, because of the way radio is, right? So like All India Radio is the equivalent of a Doordarshan, right? So when you had the only one station available to you, there was only one station and people listened to what was there. You're not differentiating on the basis of quality. You're not differentiating on the basis of content. Similarly, when you look at the FM stations right now, right? I mean, like we're talking about 11 stations in the city of Bombay. Bombay as a city is the equivalent of a size of a New York City or any of these other places. New York City has 140 radio stations.
Wow.
Okay, Bangkok has 80 radio stations. I was just in Malaysia, they have 65. Right?
Wow.
And we have 11. So if you have 11 radio stations, you have no differentiation on the basis of content. Right? Because
and all sound the same more or less.
Bollywood or 90s Bollywood. Yeah. So I think that led to a kind of space that led to the kind of opportunity to kind of look at how can we get more people to listen to different types of audio content, right? Audio content is consumed at a certain point in time, and how do we get more people to listen? That's kind of that was one of the key things that I was thinking of I was looking at when I was thinking of doing this.
Interesting. So yeah, moving to the craft part. So how critical is the host's persona?
Very, very, very important, no?
Yeah.
My thing is, see, I say this all the time. We have 24 hours in a day and you've chock-a-blocked with 25,000 things that you have to do. Why should I give you my time of day? Who are you and what do you come? Am I learning anything? Do you entertain me? It's just like, why would you choose to watch a particular television show over watching something else? Because obviously there's a huge deep connect. People tune in to listen to the host. They come to hang with the host week on week on week. Guests, I mean, the guests are going to come and, discuss different varied things. But what keeps like the show popularity going week on week? The host. So the host is a personality. We are looking for people who, subject expertise is important, but at the same time, you need to be a likable guy or girl, because like I said, either I'm tuning in to learn something, either I'm tuning in to get entertained, or plain just, this is a person who probably sounds like a friend. I mean, that's what people tune in for, right? I mean, you're almost like hanging out, even conversation shows. People tune in to those shows because they're like, like a bunch of buddies who I would have hung out with anyway, but you're on a podcast. I've been for podcast parties now, where I go to places and where they're playing a podcast and people are listening to it and having a parallel discussion over drinks. Yeah.
Serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's just about how you want to spend your time, no? Again, consumption patterns come from there because, like I said earlier, we have 24 hours in a day, of which I'll work for 12, I'll sleep for 7, I have another 5. Then it's about watching that movie, reading that book, going to that restaurant and listening to that podcast. So you have to fit in somewhere. And so you have to ensure that, you know, how you're actually figuring your show, who you are as a person. You need that person's, like, you need to quickly sit into like that 24 hour, whatever that, so that, you know, even if it is like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. We're running a survey right now on the net. Such interesting information on how people are tuning in, or what are they listening to, or why they listen to what they listen to.
No, I'm coming from a different side because I am not a pro in terms of communication. My whole AudioGAN started with a thought that I'll document few thoughts of like people in the design and performing art space. So my role is mostly towards just asking plain simple questions and let the guest talk more, right? So in this case,
but you are underestimating the appeal of your own self in this, right? If you want people to listen to you week after week, and you have, I've seen your numbers, right? You have people who come back to you week on week. The key indication for that is that your day one number is consistently growing, right? So that means people are coming and listening to you. That means they want to know what Kedar has to say. You might not be that guy who is cracking a joke a second, right? You might not be that guy who is
entertaining, sort of, right?
But at the same time, you are imparting a sense of intelligence. You are imparting a sense of knowledge. You are imparting to these people that, hey, I know my shit. And because I know my shit, I'm going to ask questions which are going to be interesting, and I'm going to follow them up correctly. And so if you want to know about stuff in this space, you should listen. So I mean, like, you know, you shouldn't and that's key, right? I mean, like, that is the reason why people are going to listen to your show, and that's why the people listen to most of the shows that we do. It's the same kind of thing.
No, actually, then I'll rephrase the question again and probably ask you that, what are your observations with respect to people or the host or the guest as opposed to the content? Because I recently heard Pulyabazi, one show which was, the content was great, but unfortunately the audio quality or the things were not really up to mark, so I lost interest. In fact, this is a similar pattern which I've seen on YouTube as well, that like great people like Ramu Ramanathan and Shanta Gokhale, they talk and then they have some 56 views just because the camera was set and they just keep talking, right? So maybe that aspect, if you can highlight on.
That is an interesting aspect. So yeah, I mean, listen, in an ideal world, every conversation would be crystal clear, sitting in a room like this with awesome mics and everything this. Now, at some point, you have to make certain trade-offs, right? I want to do the show with Pranay and Saurabh, right? They are the hosts of Pulyabazi. But now, Pranay sits out of Bangalore, so he's sitting in a nice studio area. Saurabh works 2 hours outside of Bangalore. Right, he works in a factory. He does something around the idea of electric cars, and the factory that he is doing that at is an hour or two outside of Bangalore. In Bangalore, everything is 2 hours away. The two of them can't meet together, and the third element that comes in is a guest, and that guest is also often not from Bangalore. So you have these three elements. Now, do you decide that you don't want to do this show because your audio is not going to be that great? Or do you go with the direction that, hey, you know what, some conversations are worth having even if they're not perfect from a technical standpoint? So, I mean, there's a trade-off in that, right? I mean, like, you have to make choices.
Yeah, you have to make choices.
I wish that I could get all three of them to sit in the same room all the time, right? Yeah. But, I mean, you make the choices you can that are available to you.
Just today I did one, like, small conference where I... wrote this line that no solutions are trade-offs.
Yeah,
I can
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So I wanted to ask this, especially to Kavita, that what makes podcaster go niche or narrow in the subject they choose, or how true is this notion also? I mean,
are you saying, like, does narrow stuff work? Of course it works. I mean, you know, you
I want to ask, like, at least from my standpoint, the type of content which I am consuming, or the type of, after consuming that, the type of stuff which I share, I talk about, it's been perceived, not only with me but multiple people, is that it's slightly geeky. So is it because of the nascent stage which we are in, or we will be as common as YouTube ka general video with 10 million likes and whatever?
Yeah, I think that's what. No, there are some videos that won't get, you know, the views, and some videos that are trending and whatever. But I'd say even in the audio space, right? Like there isn't any. You could have, your show could have like 2,000 listeners, but 2,000 very important listeners. See, the current podcast listener factors in this entire tastemaker element, right? Who are the people who are listening to podcasts today? And I'm talking about India.
No, there are two parts, right? There's people listening to, and there are people who are generating content also, right?
Correct.
So probably Cyrus says is more like a entertaining mainstream kind of a thing, but
That's
you
doing
don't
mad numbers.
Like is that pattern evident in the West also, where there are a lot of podcasts which are just pure entertainment?
100%. The most popular podcasts in the US right now, right, are essentially conversational shows. The Bill Simmons Show, WTF with Mark Maron, and the Joe Rogan Experience. These are the three most popular podcasts that are out there. On a week-on-week basis, right? There are some things which do different, like Serial did great numbers. There will be occasionally shows which do great numbers in different ways, but the three most popular consistent shows are these three shows. These are general entertainment shows. These are shows that people listen to, because I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast today on my way to work, and he had a 2-part episode. The first part had Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid. The second part had Michael Lewis, the author of The Big Short and Moneyball. And I mean, like, you know, it was fun, man. I mean, like, you know, it's just straight up fun. Now, on the flip side, there are shows like Exponent, which is one of my favorite shows, which I listen to religiously every week. But I would be shocked if Exponent had more than 15 to 20,000 downloads a month. Because it is the most technically deep, convoluted, theoretical show about media just generally. You know, so I think that there is room for everything.
There's room for everything.
Like, even what we do over here, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's my pattern which I'm consuming is sort of geeky, or it's sort of
You have varied interests, different interests. You know, I mean, there are some shows on the network that you know that if you promo another similar-ish or a similar, you know, another show in the same category, you know that you're very likely to discover 4-5 other shows, you know, within a certain content category. But then there are, like, for example, we have Geek Fruit, you know, which is about comic book culture, and the fans of that show are so entrenched into like what that show discusses and all kinds of like fan theories around comic books and, you know, crazy stuff. But you know what? I mean, it's got a very, very tightly like knit audience, and it's definitely not the same numbers as, say, a Cyrus says. Cyrus says, I mean, now we've gone from a weekly show to now dropping like 3 episodes a week. You know, because again, the kind of people, and also it's not just all interview, because Cock and Bull is a format, is something that I think is so popular because you're talking current affairs. And for someone like Cyrus, who's an extremely well-read, you know, has all these opinions about like so many multiple topics, it works really, really well for him.
Yeah, Golgappa is another one which is entertainment.
Yeah, you know, I mean, again, it's
so
Marathi.
It's just,
you know, there were certain things. I was like, okay, do you want to get into an extremely rigid Marathi conversation, deep, chaste Marathi conversation space? No. Otherwise, I would not have been able to do this in as quickly as we did it. You know, I mean, you know, someone like Trupti, she's been around on the network on so many other shows that she knows how this stuff functions. And so then, you know, when I had the opportunity to actually produce one, she was the first one who came to my mind.
Interesting. Obviously, there are a lot of things, but I want to just conclude with one last question, which is again coming to the earlier topic which we discussed, the first question. So what are the challenges of podcast as a medium with respect to technology? Part one. And then second is, if you guys can not predict but just share some insights on what is the long-term future in the at least next 10-20 years, if not more.
All right, so I'll take the technology piece, you take the future piece.
Okay.
Future is bright, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think we'd be sitting here doing all this like if the future wasn't bright, but no.
So from a technology perspective, we were talking about the RSS feed and how that works, right? The fact that the RSS feed is at the center of the universe for podcasting is a massive plus point, but also a massive minus point. It's a plus point in the sense that it makes it extremely easy for almost any podcasting app to start existing. You don't need permission. It's syndicated easily. It is structured data which is accessible to anybody from a public URL. Massive benefits. It's what allowed so many different podcasting clients to multiply,
import,
to bear fruit, if you will, right? But now the problem is that the kind of analytics you get from it are extremely, extremely old-fashioned, let's just say, right? I mean, like in 2005, it was great to get a download number. In 2019, a download number done cut it. You need to know what time people are consuming. You need to know where they drop off. You need to know what kind of average listening time you have. You need to be able to do insertion in terms of dynamic insertion inside content. All of these things are technically doable today, but extremely difficult to do in an RSS world. So this is one of the major issues, right? The other major issue from a podcasting perspective is one of searchability inside the podcast. And how do you drive discovery, right? This is a very difficult issue within the podcasting space, right?
But it's across.
I'm
sure Netflix also is struggling with discovery.
But see, the thing
Amazon.
is Netflix is consumed actively when you see a marketing message. Okay, when you see a marketing message, your marketing it becomes a funnel system, right? You see a marketing message for Delhi crime. Okay, you click on Delhi crime, it takes you to Netflix. You say, okay, play. If not play, add to watch later. Podcasting does not function like that. Because what happens with podcasting is that I am not going to listen to a podcast message while I'm consuming a place where I'm getting a marketing message. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, web page, whatever. If I'm seeing a podcast marketing message, I know that I'm not consuming that podcast right now. I'll consume it later. So that there's a link broken, a chain is broken at that point in time, which kind of creates some challenges in terms of the funnel system, which has become a new. I mean, like the concept is old, right? The concept's been there since the 50s, but this idea of a funnel being as closely trackable as it is something that started with the e-commerce world of 1990s, 2000s, and stuff like that, right? And we expect that in our content, we expect that in our marketing, we expect that these days, and that's a little challenging when it comes to the podcast space. But
Also, people don't listen to it on the browser, although the players are available, right? I mean, it's just a one-off thing. Because
no, you'd be surprised. We get reasonable traffic. We get reasonable amount of traffic on our browser. I think our number last month was somewhere like 11% or something that are off a browser, web browser, either on the PC or on the basically.
No, but that's because people are not aware that they can download a podcasting app.
I think what it is more along the. I honestly, I think it's more about people listening at work and stuff like that.
Or maybe storage issues. You never know, right? Because like.
I feel like people who listening off a desktop just feels like a weird thing, but I know that there are people who do it.
And of course, like you said earlier, right, a lot of people don't even know that they can actually download a podcast. Yeah, that is there. And I know that awareness element over, 3 years ago it was just like, what is a podcast? What is this even, right? To now where you're just like, you're very likely to like throw a stone on a random corner and find podcast listeners. That you
no, but that is maybe in your network. I think, it's just in metros maybe, or even.
So yeah, it is metros.
Yeah, of course. It's a Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad type scene right now. But it's
growing.
It's growing, yeah. Very likely. I think that's like the biggest joke, right? You went from, what is a podcast, to I'm a podcast host. And that change happened, or from like pretty much like maybe April last year to like December, like, between April and December, just like everything changed. So, and that's interesting because again, we're finding new listeners in new pockets, by designing shows that will definitely attract them. I mean, we produced a show called The Kolaba Cartel. It's a 10-part series on like the business of food. It's about how to build a restaurant in a city like Bombay. The appeal on a show like this is huge because, you know, outside of the fact that we got all of South Bombay to listen to Gauri Devi Dyan, because really all of them are, I mean, they're partners like at the table and at the Woodside Inn, and they're predominantly people who live there. And all of their friends, you know, tuned in to listen to them. And that's how we got South Bombay to listen to a podcast. Cyrus was our OG South Bombay person. But, you know, Cyrus is Cyrus. Cyrus has got like mass appeal. But this was... So you're designing shows that are going to bring in new pockets of listeners. Almost every show that we put out.
Right? I mean, like you try and get a show into somebody's ears for whatever reason. They'll listen to it for whatever reason, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, you know what?
It's interesting,
like
actually.
Let me find out what else there is.
Yeah, like, you know, we did How to Citizen with Meghna. He's policy guy from Delhi. All his friends now listen to him. We got like a new pocket of policy, people from Delhi to tune in. So almost every show, we're putting out a new show next week. It's called Not Just Dhansak. It's a 12-part series on Parsi food.
Wow.
You know, everyone was like, what, you're making a show for Parsis? I mean, what are the listeners that you're going to... It's like, it's not in Gujarati. Otherwise, I would have had only 100 listens. But no, it's stuff that people are interested in. And we're talking to almost everybody in that space.
Two other really new big ones, right? We started our news foray with Maruk Inayat. We started a show called The Note with Maruk Inayat. Again, news is something which is severely lacking, right? I mean, like calm news. We all know what kind of news we get on television and what kind of news we see in the newspapers, right? But calm, dispassionate, somewhat argumentative, but at the same time clear news, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know?
And of course our big hit already is the Ronnie Screwvala podcast. It's Dreaming with Your Eyes Open, and we dropped the first episode this week. And that is a show that I think, you know, again, you're going to have like all kinds of people tune in. Old, like first time Ronnie Screwvala fanboys to the new people, the new crop, you know, that are just discovering him and figuring out and so it's his entire entrepreneurial journey. So
I remember when I did one of the podcasts with my ex-boss, and he was saying, let's keep it under 10 minutes because nobody listens. And I said, podcast was like, you just don't worry, you keep...
you keep
talking and then let's see. And now he's the guy who keeps sending me like, listen to this
which is 2 hours long.
There is no right length for this stuff, right? I mean, like the length is what it should be. The great thing about working in this medium, right, and I think that's true for most digital mediums as well, right? It was true for blogging and websites. I think it's true to an extent for YouTube. Is your content gets to be the length it needs to be for it to be the best version of itself, right? And I think that's what kind of is the best thing about doing stuff in this space. You're not constrained by this idea that, I need to make it in 22 minutes and that's the only amount of time I have. It can be whatever it needs to be.
And no, that's what, like, first 10 minutes, you're pretty much just settling down into a conversation. And then the real stuff starts happening after the first 10 minutes, right? So you have to give that conversation an opportunity to kind of just work its way. At the same time, we have shows in almost whatever duration. I mean, we've got like 4 and 5 minute shows. We've got the Woody Woodpecker. We've got the Habit Coach. We've got the Note now in this really like, you know, tiny certain duration. And then we've got shows like Amit Verma show, which is like a 2.5 hour. You know, sometimes, I mean, there are episodes that are like 2 hours long, 2.5 hours. Vishal Gondal show is very regularly a 2.5 hour episode. So there is, I mean, the people who like this kind of stuff are willing to commit. I mean, really, all the short stuff we've kind of like built for the commitment phobic. But, you know, it's just like, if nothing else, can you give me 4 minutes of your time? And trust me, I'll either teach you a word or I'll help you change a terrible habit, or, you know, let me just give you a quick overview of what's happening like in the world of politics. So, you know, you're kind of building all kinds of things for like different kind of listener bases. So...
And then what's the future like? 10, maybe 12, 20 years? Is that? Because I understand, like, even I'm in the tech space, so it just keeps changing rapidly. But at least in terms of content, in terms of pattern of listening?
So I am very optimistic about podcasting and digital media in general, right? I think that the speed at which you're going to start seeing acceleration in terms of both content consumption and production is going to astound people. More and more I see people who I know, my relatives, my older relatives, right? They're consuming YouTube in crazy numbers. They're consuming Netflix in insane numbers. Every day somebody is asking me, hey, do I need to subscribe to Hotstar, or if I want to watch this, can I just do like this? You know, I mean, like, I'm getting these kinds of questions all the time, right? From people who you would not think of as technically literate people. There's also a lot to be said for the quote unquote geo effect. You know, there is a lot to be said for that, right? I mean, the fact is that data is not scary anymore. Right? Earlier it was, for the longest time, you were worried about how much this is going to cost you to listen to something or watch something or something like that. Now you don't care anymore, right? So I mean, like, I feel like India is going to probably leapfrog Western Europe and the US in terms of how quickly we move to a digital first consumption diet.
That's very interesting and positive. Yeah.
We are very gung ho, Kedar.
एक और point था, एक second. Slip point. ठीक है, we'll continue. So, okay, I think, I would like to just add few links in this episode where you have spoken more about podcasts, so that there's different aspects which you have covered about podcasting, may not be really craft or art side, but please do share that.
I will.
And once again, thank you for hosting me in this studio. And
thank you for hosting us on your show.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher, or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round Is On Me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunyavan, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigritties. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them, and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks, guys. Without you, this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.